The rain came down in steady silver sheets as the city of Ridgefield blurred behind Jonathan Wells's car window. Inside his sleek black Mercedes, the world felt silent, sterile. The leather seats smelled of wealth, the dashboard gleamed with precision, but there was no warmth. Not anymore. Jonathan glanced at the time on the dashboard. 4:13 p.m. He was early, for once. He hadn't planned to leave work before sundown, but something inside him had shifted. Perhaps guilt, or maybe that aching loneliness that crept in when he remembered her face. Claire, his late wife. She had been the sun in their lives. Now their home was just a house with too many echoes and not enough laughter. The driveway gates opened automatically as the car pulled in. The mansion stood like a fortress behind them. White stone walls, towering windows, trimmed hedges, and not a soul in sight. It was too big, too clean, too quiet. He stepped inside, loosening his tie, his shoes making no sound on the marble floors. "Nadia?" he called. The nanny usually greeted him by now. "Eli?" No answer. He walked past the kitchen, where a pot of soup steamed on the stove, untouched. Odd. He made his way toward the living room when he noticed the little green light blinking on the security monitor tucked into the hallway wall cabinet. It had been triggered recently. Curious, Jonathan tapped the screen. The footage played back in black and white, showing the backyard, the trimmed grass slick from earlier rain, the swing still swaying slightly in the wind. But it was what he saw next that made him freeze Eli. His son, and beside him, a girl. A young girl, maybe 9 or 10, her clothes worn, her shoes soaked, hair tangled and face pale from the cold. But her hands were steady, kind, and patient as she knelt before his son, holding out both arms. Eli stood wobbly, clutching her fingers. "No way," Jonathan whispered. The boy took a tiny, uncertain step. Then another. The girl clapped gently, her eyes lighting up, and Eli grinned. That rare, bright grin Jonathan hadn't seen in months. The footage lasted only 3 minutes, but by the end, Eli had taken at least 6 steps into the girl's arms. She caught him and held him like a big sister would. Jonathan stared at the screen long after it went dark. Who was she? He backed up the footage to check the timestamp. 3:22 p.m., less than an hour ago. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was Nadia. "Mr. Wells, I'm so sorry. I had to step out for a few minutes to take a delivery. I didn't think anyone would come near the gate." He cut the call short and headed straight for the backyard. The grass was wet beneath his shoes as he stepped outside, scanning the area. The swing creaked in the wind. The garden was empty. Then he saw it. A small makeshift cloth lay tucked behind a tree. Probably once a scarf, now muddy and frayed. Near it, a crumpled snack wrapper. Someone had been here. She had been here. Jonathan crouched to pick it up, and as he did, his heart did something it hadn't done in months. It stirred. This girl, this stranger, had succeeded where professionals had failed. Eli had taken his first real steps, and for that, she had disappeared without a trace. He turned back toward the house. His son was already at the glass door, tiny palms pressed against it, eyes shining with more life than he'd seen in ages. "Daddy," Eli whispered as Jonathan scooped him up. "You were walking," Jonathan said softly, voice cracking. "You were walking, buddy." Eli nodded. "She helped me." "Who was she?" Eli leaned his head on his father's shoulder. "She said her name is Hope." Jonathan stepped inside the house, loosening his tie. The marble floors echoed beneath his polished shoes. A faint scent of lavender drifted in from the diffusers his assistant insisted on keeping. His footsteps carried him down the hall, past portraits he barely looked at anymore, toward the one room that still held meaning, Eli's playroom. He expected to see the usual, his son sitting alone, maybe watching cartoons or lining up his blocks in a straight, obsessive row, like always. But instead, the nanny met him in the hallway, nervously wringing her hands. "Mr. Wells, I didn't know you were coming early." "I needed to," he said simply, his voice flat. "Where's Eli?" "In the garden, sir." With someone raised an eyebrow. "Someone?" "She's just a girl. She comes by sometimes, I think. I, I was on a call just for a moment, and when I looked out the window, she was already there. His brow furrowed. He turned and walked swiftly toward the back of the house, through the sunroom and out to the garden. The cold rain had stopped, and the late afternoon light glowed against the wet grass. Then he froze. There, near the rose bushes, was his son, standing. Eli's little legs were wobbly, trembling with effort. His face was scrunched in pure focus, arms outstretched, and standing in front of him was a young girl, maybe 12 or 13. She had wild curls tied up in a messy bun, clothes far too big for her tiny frame, and eyes as gentle as a lullaby. She was barefoot. "Come on, you got this," she whispered, holding her hands just out of reach. "Just one more step, little man." Eli took a shaky step forward and then another, until he stumbled right into her arms. She caught him, laughing softly, and he clung to her like he knew her, like he trusted her. Jonathan didn't realize he'd been holding his breath. "Who are you?" he called out. The girl's head snapped up. For a split second, fear flashed in her eyes. She stood up slowly, still holding Eli's hand. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice small. "I didn't mean to be here. I I was just walking by." He waved at me through the gate. "I didn't steal nothing, I swear." Jonathan stepped forward, scanning her closely now. Her clothes were damp, too thin for this weather. Her shoes, if you could call them that, were nothing more than worn-out sandals with duct tape on the sides. She looked like she hadn't had a warm meal in days, but she was the first person in months to get Eli to stand, let alone walk. "What's your name?" he asked, his tone softening. She hesitated. "Mira." "How long have you been coming here?" She looked down. "A few days. He's always outside. I I think he gets lonely." Jonathan knelt beside his son. "Eli, do you know Mira?" Eli smiled, a real smile. "She plays music on her phone and makes me laugh." Jonathan felt something sharp twist in his chest. His own son had said more in one sentence than he usually said in an entire week. Mira started to back away. "I'm sorry. I won't come back, I promise." "No," Jonathan said quickly. "Wait," she stopped. "You helped my son walk. Do you have any experience with therapy?" She blinked. "No, sir." "Then how?" She looked at Eli with a soft, almost sisterly gaze. "I used to help my baby brother. He had a limp. Mom said all he needed was love and time, so I gave him both." Jonathan was quiet for a long moment. His mind raced. What kind of child wandered around barefoot, helping strangers, speaking like that? "Where are your parents?" She bit her lip. "Gone." It wasn't a lie. It was too practiced, too immediate. And suddenly Jonathan saw it. She was homeless, possibly an orphan. And yet she had taught his son something none of the highly paid specialists could. "You hungry, Mira?" She looked up, surprised. "What?" "There's dinner inside. You're welcome to join us." Her eyes darted between him and Eli, unsure. I don't want nothing," she said. "Just wanted to see him walk." Jonathan gave a small smile. "You already gave him more than anyone else has." She nodded, eyes glistening, and turned to go. But Eli tugged her hand. "Stay, please." That's when Mira crumbled. She followed them inside. Jonathan stormed across the backyard toward the garden. The rain had thinned to a drizzle now, just enough to gloss the grass in silver. And there they were. Eli stood shakily, small legs wobbling, arms stretched out in front of him like tiny wings. His lips curled into the widest smile Jonathan had seen in weeks. Standing just a few feet away, hands open like she was catching sunlight, was a girl, maybe 12. Her clothes were soaked, a size too big, worn at the seams, barefoot. A tattered backpack lay at the foot of the garden bench. "Just one more step, buddy," she said softly. "I'm right here." Eli took it, a full, clean step. Wobbly, unsure, but a step. Jonathan's breath caught in his throat. "Eli!" he called, stepping forward. The girl jumped and instinctively backed away. Eli tottered, startled by his father's voice, and dropped to the grass. The girl rushed to him. "Are you okay?" she whispered, brushing the mud from his little hands. He nodded, lip trembling, but he didn't cry. Jonathan approached, eyes fixed on her. "Who are you?" he demanded, kneeling to pick up his son. The girl stood slowly. "I didn't mean to scare him. I was just helping." "You were on private property." "I know. I'm sorry. I saw him through the fence and he looked lonely. I didn't take anything, I swear." Jonathan studied her face. Brown eyes wide and guarded, freckles beneath the rain, a jaw clenched like she was ready to be punished. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice softening. "Rose," she whispered. The girl stood stiff as Jonathan approached. Her eyes darted toward the gate, calculating whether she could make it out before he reached her. "Wait," Jonathan said, holding up a hand. "I'm not going to hurt you." She didn't move, but her chin lifted in defiance. "You don't belong here," he added, more gently this time. "Who are you?" She glanced at Eli, who was now crawling toward her on all fours, laughing, completely unbothered. "Rose," she said finally. "My name's Rose." He looked her over again, wet, dirty, thin. And still she had spoken to his son with more kindness than most therapists ever had. "How long have you been coming here?" She hesitated. "Couple weeks." He blinked. "Weeks? I come when no one's watching. He looked lonely, and I was nearby. Sometimes I sleep in the alley behind your fence." "I didn't mean any harm." Jonathan's mind raced. How could security miss this? How could his staff not know? His eyes fell to the paper bag clutched in her hand. "What's that?" he asked. She hesitated, then offered it to him. Inside were 3 half-eaten crackers, a tiny bottle of water, and a crumpled photograph of her, much younger, standing between a woman and man with tired smiles. On the back, in faded pen, "Rose, age 5, forever our sunshine." Jonathan looked up. "Where are your parents?" She didn't answer right away. Her voice, when it came, was a whisper. "Gone." Rose shifted uncomfortably in the kitchen chair, her thin fingers wrapped around a mug of cocoa. Her clothes, fresh, dry, warm, swallowed her frame. Jonathan had insisted she change. The housekeeper found something of Claire's that fit well enough. It was strange seeing his late wife's old hoodie on a girl who'd slept in the cold streets. Eli sat beside her, cheerfully munching crackers, watching cartoons. The boy had not stopped smiling since she entered the house again. It didn't make sense. Nothing Jonathan did, no toy, no therapist, no money, had pulled that kind of joy from him. "So," Jonathan said, sitting across the table, voice steady but gentle, "where are your parents?" Rose didn't answer right away. Her eyes lowered to the steam rising from her mug. "My mom died 3 years ago," she said quietly. "Foster homes after that. One of them wasn't safe. I ran." Jonathan's hands tightened around his own cup. "You've been on your own since?" She nodded.